God. Hi, Lily. Welcome.
Hi, Kathy. Thank you.
So I shared a little bit in the intro how we've been working together for the last couple of years and just what a gift you are in my life. And I'm so excited for you to share a little bit about your own spiritual journey with us today.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice. Okay, well, I feel like you and I were talking a little beforehand, and I feel like a spiritual journey is a process, right? It's not like a destination. And it's something, man, I probably have been doing since I was a child, right? And with astrology, that's a really good question, because around 28 to 30, we have our Saturn return, and then we have it again around 58. And that, if you haven't been kind of conscious or awake or doing your work, the universe will sometimes kick you in the ass.
And I love how lovingly you say that. This is true.
Yeah, and it's really a way just to wake up and do your work, right? To evolve a little, to live this life a little more conscious. So I grew up, my mom always did astrology. It was before computers, that dates me. And she would spend a lot of time doing the math and kind of writing them out. And she was always talking astrology. She was always saying, "Oh, Lily Lou, that's because of your moon in Leo." And so it was something I grew up with, right? It was just second nature. And then when my first son was born, computers were a thing, and she actually showed me what the chart looks like. And I was like, man, I get that. And then I kind of started on my own journey. I did my own learning and training in astrology and just dabbled in it and played with it. And then I also did a training with Stephen Forrest. He's my favorite astrologer. You know, it's really interesting. You have to be careful, like with anything else. Nowadays, there's an abundance of information, and that's such a good thing and can be such a difficult thing too, right? There's good and bad information out there. So my mom helped me to know who were really legitimate astrologers. I feel like I got really good training.
And then what I enjoy so much is when you and I are talking, you're able to bring that into a therapy session. So share a little bit maybe about how those two came together. Like, did you start out in therapy and then you were picking up on things, or how did that happen?
Yeah, that's such a good question. So I did astrology for years just for fun. I was always doing charts here and there. And then I went back to graduate school when my kids were older, and I became a therapist, and I integrated my knowledge that I already had with astrology into therapy. Not always. Yeah, I leave it kind of open and kind of use my intuition if somebody wants to do that. So therapy really is about healing, right? I mean, I feel like I like to look at it as healing instead of just symptom management. And when you heal, it's mind, body, spirit alignment. And what happens is, as we grow up, we have tons of experiences, whether they're with our family or friends or at dance or through social media or school, and they start to we start to build programs, and our ego starts to defend against some things that are difficult. And so I feel like the therapeutic process is pushing away a lot of that programming that isn't who you are, so that you can align more fully with yourself, right? You can be more authentically who you are. And astrology is just one more tool. It's just like a Myers-Briggs test or anything what a astrology. So let's just dial back for a minute. The astrology that you read in a newspaper or a magazine is just your sun sign, and it's fun, but it's not really accurate. When you do a chart, we are each, when we're born, at the time that we were born, the stars are in a certain place in the sky, and that energy is what's in our chart. And so a chart has so many layers. It isn't just the sun, which is the way we show up in the world, but it's our moon, our emotional nature. It's our rising sign, the way that we perceive the world and the world perceives us. And so a chart, when it's done correctly, it gives you, it's a map. It's a map of our potential. It's a map of our challenges. It helps you to, if a chart is done right, you should never go, oh, that is so surprising. I didn't know that. It should be very validating, because there's something about when you read a chart, you're like, oh yeah, I knew that. And so it's just another tool to help you in the healing process, I think, to find your way to help you become more grounded in who you are.
Yes, definitely. In that chart at birth, is that called the natal chart?
Yeah, that's your natal chart.
And when we worked together, I mean, it was like at least a 2-hour call. I think I took 13 pages of notes. It's very in depth, but it's also a really beautiful gift when you're going through something, or you're pondering something, and to go back to it and to read that, and just have it as, like you're saying, as a tool that also kind of allows us to reflect on our past, but also our present and our future. And what has been really neat, when I'll share, for example, like something with parenting. And for example, I'm a Pisces and I'm very nebulous and not so good at boundaries. Then when my Capricorn children that are very persistent, it helps me to see their characteristics, but it also helps me to understand a lot of what I'm doing, but then that next step of how to do it in a different way. And you call that learning a new language, right?
Yes, yeah, especially with parenting, you're always learning a new language, right? So we tend to, well, from 0 to 7, we're like sponges, and we're just taking in a radio, a movie of everything in our environment, and that becomes our foundation. And some of that is good and some of it isn't. So when we become parents, it's really important to become conscious, right, of what we want to do and what we don't want to do. And if you understand your own self, it's easier for you to pick up on, like you said, oh, boundaries are hard for me. That's really good information. So a chart is, sometimes they're used incorrectly. I don't like to use that for prediction or static labeling, like this is the way that I am, but it's that energy. What do I do with that energy? And what is my greatest potential? And how do I, especially, we all have gifts, and a chart really helps us to see our strengths. And wow, as a parent, that's what we want to do. We want to incorporate on our strengths and our children's strengths. That being said, I don't do children's charts until they're 18, because I feel like they need to find themselves, right? It needs to be a journey of discovery, and you don't want to put ideas into their head like, this is who you are. We want them to discover who they are as they grow.
Well, and teaching that growth mindset, right? And how much is, with all I think all information is, it's always left up to us to interpret. What does that mean for me now?
Yes. Yeah. And that's the important thing. This isn't static. This is just that how the planetary energy is working for you. And it's just a good way to harness that, right? So if you have, I wish I should have looked at your chart. I can't remember. But if you have, your sun sign is where you shine, right? So if you see it in your chart and you can see the house that it's in, it helps you to know that your potential, right? It just helps you to focus your energy and more conscious of the way that you show up in the world. And really, the point is to just be more authentically ourselves, right?
Yeah. And I like what you were sharing earlier about that alignment with our body, mind, and our spirit. I think for so long, the spirit wasn't part of that. It was mind and body. And I love that we're talking more about spirit and bringing spirit into that alignment process, but also from a therapy standpoint. I think that's where there is a lot of that misalignment, where we're disassociated either from our mind or from our body or from our spirit, and being able to get into that alignment, especially if maybe it hasn't been modeled for us, can be a challenge. And so having a therapist that can walk you through that process and model and show you a different way is such a gift.
Yeah, thank you. It's just waking up, right? I feel like we get really stuck in our heads and our thoughts, and really most of our thoughts are just what has been programmed. So being still and really learning to tap into your intuition, right? And our inner knowing and who we are is a big part of healing and parenting. And I feel like a chart is just a really good tool to help you navigate that piece. You've got your spirit. There's 10 planets, 12 planets. Sorry, I had to count them. And they are in each house. They mean something different. They give you different energy. So after I saw my son's chart, I was like, oh, this is so exciting. I get this, right? And so I started delving into it and learning it more. And when you said your spiritual journey, I feel like it's always growing and always evolving, right?
Yeah,
So we
yeah.
really tend to identify with our beliefs, and can be just our programming. And really, the only thing that's certain in life is death. Everybody will die. And there's also the certainty of change. And so we need to understand that as we get more information, we learn more. So for instance, I used to be a Santa Claus believer, right? Until I got new information. And that's an important way to look at it. So we can stay growing and more fluid, and not looking at it as this is who you are, but looking at it as, oh, this is symbolic of our psyche, and this is a map and gives us information that helps us on this journey.
That's really great. And I think so often, especially in those like transition moments, to have something to go back to really have that curiosity around, to ponder it. The way I process is through writing. And sometimes I'll look at something in my chart and it'll spark some curiosity that then I can go research and I'll write about. But really just kind of having that time and space to sit with something and to have curiosity around it, and not so much identifying it and giving it a story, but allowing that creativity to kind of flow from it. I like the way that you described that.
Oh,
That
I
was neat.
love that. That's exactly, be curious,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Be curious, right? That's how we grow and we learn. And that's the spiritual journey. I feel like
yeah.
we're here. Okay, this is just a thought that came to me. I feel like a big thing nowadays is we live in a very comfortable area right now, right? Our world, we have microwaves and stoves and fast food
Flushing
and
toilets.
yeah. And I mean, more so here where we live than in some countries, but in any case, life is more comfortable and more ease. And I think we get stuck in comfort, and growth is actually uncomfortable. We kind of have to step out of our comfort zone a little bit in order to grow.
What would you recommend for someone that is feeling comfortable and that wants to lean into that more? What advice would you give to them? Because you're saying, what I'm hearing you say is that it's good to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, well, it's important. I mean, we don't need to create discomfort, but we need to step into discomfort. So, for instance, A full life takes effort. So it would be a lot easier to sit on my sofa and just watch Netflix all day, every day. But a full life, if I want to go skiing, we talked about skiing, you've got to get your gear and go out in the cold and use your muscles. But it's much more fulfilling. So it isn't about creating discomfort. It's about, so if you say, even with children, right? Kids will say, well, I don't want to go to school. And you're like, yeah, right. That makes a lot of sense. And that's where you learn and you grow. You got this, right? You can do hard things. Or if I'm a child and I'm afraid, I have a recital and I'm afraid to go and dance, right? I'm going to step into that discomfort and do it. And then that way it rewires our brain for capacity. And that's also part of healing, right? When we step out of our comfort zone a little bit, and that helps us to grow. I think it's Dr. Joe Dispenza. I was listening to one of his YouTubes and he was just saying, a lot of times we don't wake up or we don't change or we don't grow until our life falls apart. And he goes, how great if we just decided to do that without, right? We don't have to be in a state of anxiety. What if we decided now? And I think that's maybe that's where a chart is good. It helps you to hone in who you are. And then maybe if you like writing, then you step out of your comfort zone and you actually write a book and get it published, or, you, whatever it is, right?
Mm-hmm. So tell me more, just in your own personal life and using your own chart, how has that kind of helped you on your path?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And my mom was really good she would, when we're growing up, oh, that's your Mars in Cancer, And so that helped me learn the verbiage. I think that I have the moon in Leo. That's your emotional nature and it's what you need. And I think sometimes if I'm worried about what people think or I'm feeling insecure, I can remind myself that that's the negative way to use that moon in Leo. And the positive way to use it is to feel the fear and do it anyway, and to stand up and have a voice, right? So I think it reminds me. And I also think I'm going through my Saturn return right now too. And so it helps me to look and think, my Saturn is in the 8th house, and it's about learning to let go of control and flow and what's underneath the deep things in a relationship, and to work on those things. So it's just a good reminder. Sometimes when I'm losing my way, I'll pull out my North Node and remind myself the North Node is what you're here to learn. And those are the things that I need to step into. And it's interesting because my North Node is Leo. It's to have fun and be present and enjoy the day and maybe not be as responsible. And my daughter always laughs. She goes, oh, I wish I had that. And I said, but you don't realize how much angst that gives me to think, what, not be responsible and just have fun? So we each have our learning is also individualized.
Yeah. And it's what I'm also getting the sense of just with my own chart is it's often the opposite of what is comfortable for you. And it's that reminder to play, to not take life so seriously, to seek whatever those things are.
Right.
But just to have that kind of map and to have that guide to look at and be like, oh, I am doing a good job.
Yeah. And as you get older and you revisit it, so there's so much learning to astrology. I feel like I'm always learning more. There's just so much to it. And so if I do a chart with a 20-year-old and they come back when they're 30, they'll be like, oh, did you tell me that? Because in different points in your life, you're listening. And then you can actually, if you do somebody who's older, they're like, oh, I did that. I stepped into that space, right? It's really validating. And the good thing with a chart is it helps you to harness the energy, right? Instead of fight against things that aren't. I think my mom said, like, you can be anything you want, right? And if you're using the energy in your chart, then you're using it to the best of your ability. That it, like, I think of American Idol when Simon Cowell was in the beginning, and he'd say, dude, you can't hold a tune. And they're like, you just don't know anything. You're going to wait and see. And I feel that way about a chart. Sometimes when we push against what we really are, we're fighting instead of flowing.
Yeah. And one thing that I've also enjoyed, because our friendship really started with having you do my natal chart. And then I learned that you also did therapy, and we've worked in, various different capacities over the years, but I really enjoyed that from the very beginning that we kind of had, I don't know, like we kind of got into it quickly, and we didn't need 3 to 5 sessions just of intro and talk. And it was just kind of like, we just kind of got down to business, like really quick, and kind of opened up a lot of stuff that I got to look at. And what's, I think, beautiful in therapy is always when we're doing our own work and then working with you also on the parenting side. So we're healing the past, but then we're also kind of at this fulcrum where we're changing who we are and the impact that we have as we parent. And that's been such a neat gift to have.
Oh, I love that. Thanks, Kathy. And it's not changing who you are. It's changing the bad habits in parenting that you pick up, right? The programming.
Yes.
And that is the new language, right? Now you've got to learn to talk a different way because it wasn't modeled for you. And that's the interesting thing about parenting. A lot of it is just a skill. And if it wasn't modeled for you, then you have to just practice it.
Well, and what comes to mind is this moment where we were at the dinner table, and like my husband just very nicely said something, and it completely triggered me, and it helped me to walk through, like, why was that triggering? But then it also helped me to have compassion with our children when they're going through that, and when they're in that fight, flight, or freeze, and the things that we can really do. So I think it's such a beautiful process as we, seek and uncover kind of who we are and the programs that have run us, but to, like you're saying, change those programs and then work to do it differently with our kids.
Yeah, right. So the metaphor I like is like the programming that isn't who you are. If you're really sensitive and intuitive soul, and you've put into this box of this very concrete thinker, right? You have to push away that dirt and connect. You don't have to create anything. You just have to connect with who you are, right? And I do feel like a chart is such a good tool for that, because it validates a chart is like a fingerprint. It's yours. And a lot of people say, oh, I'm so excited. It's going to be so fun. Can I bring my friends? And I'm like, you're not going to feel that way, because it's really intimate and personal, right? It isn't a parlor game. It really is a deep dive into who you are. And I think that's exactly right. Like with you, when we did your chart first and then did therapy after, it was so great, because right from the get-go, it was a deep dive into your potentials and your challenges and your fears and the things that make you who you are.
And it's also helped to create a lot of compassion for myself, and like a depth of understanding that I don't know that I would have understood otherwise.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. And that's the part that I think therapy is really catching up with. They're doing a lot of mindfulness now. They've actually done research. In the 60s, it was all very woo-hoo, right? And now they're doing brain research and finding that it rewires your brain, builds new neural connections. And let's see, I got sidetracked on that part of it. What was it that you just said?
Well, just it adds like such a depth to the work that we're doing.
Right,
and
right,
having that.
right. So we're now doing more getting into the body, doing
Mhm.
somatic work, and all of that, which is way more healing, right, than just talk therapy.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Is there anything else that you want our listeners to know or anything you feel inspired to share?
I feel like it's a journey. And oh, it was about compassion. That's what you said. That's one thing that they have found in trauma
Mm,
therapy is that having a lot of compassion for yourself is a key ingredient for
mm,
overcoming trauma. And so I think that's with the mindfulness, that's another thing that's been studied a lot. What I think, when I went to graduate school, they put me in an elementary school, and all my childhood trauma kind of showed up again. And I emailed my professor and I said, "Can I see you?" And I went into his office, and I'm sure he thought I was going to talk a paper. And I burst into tears. And he's like, "Okay, so tell me what's going on." And I said, "Oh, I've already worked on my stuff. Like, what is going on?" And he said, "Really, it isn't like that. It isn't like you a linear thing. Oh, I've worked on it. Now I'm enlightened. Now I'm fine. Now I'm going to move on." It's an unlayering, and it's an up and a down your entire life. And I think the chart helps you with that too, because it shows you all the different layers that we have. And as we unlayer one thing, we might be triggered with something else. And then as we work on that,
mm,
we grow from that piece. So I think that's another compassion piece, is just knowing that life is full of challenges. And instead of trying to, oh, as soon as this is over, I'm going to be better, just reminding
yes.
yourself, I'm going to enjoy this right now, and I'm capable of dealing with the next challenge when it shows up. So it's about building capacity, right? And like you said, a growth mindset. I don't have it yet. I'm learning, I'm growing. I can handle this. I can do hard things.
And also learning that like compassionate self-talk
Yes.
of and you and I practice this a lot is when these things do trigger us, how to walk through those emotions and to have that grace and that patience with ourselves.
100%. So, what we like to do is we like to avoid our feelings and stuff them and repress them, and they come out sideways in bad health or bad behavior. And we like to overthink everything. And what we really need to do is we need to learn to feel our feelings and process them in our bodies as they show up, and step away from the thoughts and learn how to discipline our mind to focus on what's real, instead of ruminating about the past or what if thinking about the future, or even the way we talk to ourselves. We would never talk to anybody as meanly as we talk to ourselves. And so that just takes discipline to notice, be an observer of your thoughts, right? Step
Mhm,
away from your thoughts, look at them. Oh, I'm having the thought that I'm stupid, right?
mhm,
Well, of course I
yeah.
think that. That's a habit. And then you can learn to tell yourself, and I just don't have it yet. I'm learning. And so it really is a process of rewiring, learning how to observe what's happening in your brain, and then deciding to discipline your brain in healthier ways. I never say, it's not toxic positivity like, oh no, I've got it. I'm perfect. I'm incredible. It's something that's real but healthier, right? So if you make a mistake, instead of saying, oh, I'm so stupid, you can say, oh, that's okay. I haven't learned it yet. I can keep trying.
And again, another thing that I've loved just in working with you is that encouragement of like, good job. What Lily and I have been doing lately is once a month, I'll kind of make a list of some hard things that I didn't know how to problem solve. But now we're getting to this part where now I'm able to come to Lily with some of the things that I feel proud about. And it's really great to have a champion that I can go to and for you to say like, hey, good job, you did problem solve that really well. And it just is so nice to have somebody to have that space with, right? Like to have that hour of time that I can, if something comes up and I don't know how to solve it, then I can add it to my list. But then we have that space and that sacred time to do the problem solving, to work on it, but then to go practice it, and then to come back and say, hey, this was really clunky, but I'm practicing it, right?
Yes. Oh, I love that. That makes me so happy. That's exactly right. Because we're always learning and growing, and it's okay to make mistakes. And even we're talking about parenting right now. And with parenting, we don't need to show up perfectly, right? We just need to be aware. We need to be connecting. We need to be apologizing. We need to be learning. We're growing together, right?
Yes.
And the important thing is we love our children, we become parents, we set boundaries, we help them grow up, and we don't need to be perfect.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Just such a joy always to talk with you. Is there anything else that
No,
you
that's
want to share?
perfect. Kathy, thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. How can our
Yeah.
listeners connect with you?
Um, Probably email. I put my email address on a thing I sent you. They can just email me. Would be great. Okay. Kathy, thank you so much. This was such a
Thank you,
pleasure.
Lily.
I appreciate it.
Take care.
Okay. Bye.